September 1839. A Scottish merchant walks into the British Foreign Office. He carries a leather briefcase. Inside, maps of the Chinese coast, battle strategies, and a list of demands. He's not a general, not a diplomat. He's a drug dealer. And in the next 2 hours, he will convince Lord Palmerston to start a war that will kill tens of thousands, addict millions, and reshape Asia for the next 200 years. But here's what makes this worse. He never touched opium himself, never set foot on Chinese soil with drugs in his hands. He just built the machine and let 12 million people destroy themselves. His name is William Jardine, and this is how one drug dealer broke an empire. Lord Palmerston sits behind his desk. He's the British Foreign Secretary, one of the most powerful men in the world. He decides who Britain trades with, who Britain fights, who Britain destroys. And right now, he's listening to a drug dealer. Jardine spreads his maps across the desk. He points to harbors, rivers, fortifications. He's spent 20 years sailing these waters. He knows every inch of the Chinese coast. Here, he says, attack here and here. Seize these ports. Blockade this river. He slides over a document, battle strategies, troop numbers, the exact warships needed. And here are our demands. Full compensation for the opium China destroyed. New ports open to British trade. And this island. He taps the map. Hong Kong. We want Hong Kong. Palmerston studies the maps. This isn't some wild fantasy. This is a complete military operation planned down to the last detail. And why should Britain go to war for opium merchants, he asks. Jardine doesn't blink. Not for opium, my lord, for British honor. China imprisoned British citizens, seized British property, humiliated the crown. This cannot stand. He never mentions addiction, never mentions the 12 million Chinese hooked on his product, never mentions the families destroyed, the fortunes lost, the bodies piling up in opium dens across China. He just talks about honor, trade, British prestige. And Palmerston listens. Because here's the thing about drug dealers who change history. They never call it drugs. They call it commerce. But you don't addict 12 million people by accident. You don't build that kind of empire on luck. So how does a dirt-poor Scottish farm boy become the architect of the largest drug operation in human history? William Jardine was born in 1784 on a dirt-poor farm in Scotland. His father died when he was 9. The family had nothing. His older brother scraped together enough money to send him to medical school. At 18, Jardine graduated and joined the British East India Company as a ship's surgeon. The pay was terrible, but the job came with a perk: 2 chests of cargo space for private trading. Most sailors ignored it. Jardine didn't. He bought goods in one port, sold them in another, leased cargo space from sailors who didn't want theirs, kept meticulous records, made careful calculations. 2 chests became 4, 4 became 8. By 30, he'd quit medicine. By 40, he was one of the richest merchants in Asia. What was he selling? Opium. But here's what separated Jardine from every other opium trader. He didn't just sell drugs. He industrialized them. In 1832, he partnered with James Matheson. They formed Jardine, Matheson and Company, gave it a Chinese name, Iwo, Happy Harmony. Happy Harmony for a company that sells poison. Other traders worked alone. Jardine built a supply chain. Other traders owned one ship. Jardine built a fleet. Other traders made deals. Jardine made systems. By 1838, his system was moving 40,000 chests of opium per year. That's 2,500 tons, enough to addict millions. But how do you move 2,500 tons of illegal drugs into a country that's banned them for over 100 years? You build a machine, and Jardine's machine was perfect. Here's how Jardine's operation worked. Step 1. His agents in India buy raw opium from farmers. Bengal, Malwa, Patna. The British East India Company controls the supply, but independent traders like Jardine handle the smuggling. Step 2. Workers process the opium in factories. They knead the sticky black paste into balls, pack them into wooden chests lined with mango leaves. Each chest weighs 140 pounds, contains enough poison to create hundreds of addicts. Step 3. Jardine's clipper ships, the fastest vessels on the ocean, carry the chests to China. The voyage takes 6 weeks. The ships are armed with cannons. The crews are trained to fight. But they don't sail into Chinese ports. Opium has been illegal in China since 1729. Any ship caught smuggling faces confiscation. Any sailor caught dealing faces execution. So Jardine invented something: floating warehouses. Old ships anchored in international waters at Linton Island just off the Pearl River Delta. The opium is transferred from the clippers to these hulks, stacked floor to ceiling in the holds, guarded by armed men with muskets. The ships never move. They just sit there, floating treasure chest full of poison. But think about this for a second. You're sitting on a ship in the middle of the ocean with millions of dollars worth of illegal drugs, and your customers are on the mainland, miles away, behind Chinese customs patrols that will execute anyone caught smuggling. How do you bridge that gap? How do you move thousands of chests of opium from international waters to the streets of Canton without getting caught? Jardine's answer was brilliant. 3 a.m. Pearl River Delta. A fleet of boats emerges from the darkness. They're called scrambling crabs, long, sleek, low in the water. Each one carries 40 rowers. They can outrun any customs patrol, and they're heavily armed. The smugglers approach Jardine's floating warehouse, flash a signal. A rope ladder drops down. The transaction is simple: cash for opium. The smugglers pay in silver, Spanish dollars mostly. They get a chit, a claim ticket for a specific number of chests. Then they row to the warehouse ships and collect their cargo. The chests are lowered into their boats in nets. By dawn, they're back on the Chinese mainland. Within days, the opium is in dens across Canton, in pipes, in lungs, in veins, and Jardine's silver is safely locked away. This happens every night. Hundreds of transactions, thousands of chests, millions of dollars. The perfect crime. Jardine never touches the drug himself, never sets foot on Chinese soil with opium in his pocket. His hands are technically clean. If anyone gets caught, that's the smuggler's problem. By 1838, his company, Jardine Matheson and Company, has 19 clipper ships for ocean crossings, hundreds of smaller boats for coastal work, warehouses in Canton, Macau, and a dozen other ports. They control half of all foreign trade with China. And Jardine had one more trick. He hired a Prussian missionary named Charles Gutzlaff, a man of God who spoke perfect Chinese. Jardine convinced him that the best way to spread Christianity was to travel along the coast on opium smuggling ships. The missionary could hand out Bibles while the sailors unloaded drugs. Gutzlaff agreed. For years, he served as interpreter for Jardine's captains, a Christian preacher helping to poison millions. That was William Jardine. He could convince anyone of anything, and the opium kept flowing. In 1810, traders imported 4,500 chests into China. By 1838, that number has exploded to 40,000. That's 2,500 tons of raw opium every single year. But what does 2,500 tons actually look like on the ground? Canton, 1838. A line stretches 3 blocks down a narrow street. Thousands of people waiting, shaking. They're not waiting for food. They're waiting for opium. Look at them. Hollow eyes, sunken cheeks, bones visible through tattered clothes. A year ago, this man was a soldier. This woman was a teacher. This teenager was going to inherit his father's shop. Now, they're ghosts. That's what the Chinese call them, opium ghost. But it's not just Canton, it's everywhere. Walk into any coastal town, you'll see the same thing. Opium dens on every street. Smoke so thick you can taste it. Bodies lying in doorways. In some towns, 90% of adults are addicted. The addiction starts slowly. A man tries opium at a party, feels the warmth spreading through his body, the pain disappearing, the worries fading. He tries it again and again. Within months, he doesn't want it. He needs it. Without opium, his body rebels, chills, sweating, cramps, nausea. Some people can't survive withdrawal, so they don't stop. They keep smoking. They sell everything they own, their furniture, their tools, their land, their future. Now scale that up. Not just one person, not just one town, millions of people across an entire empire. The Imperial Army, once the most feared military in Asia, can barely function. Officers are addicted. Soldiers trade their weapons for opium. Government officials show up to work unable to think straight. They can't read documents, can't make decisions. Tax collection collapses. Now, let's rewind for a second, back to 1800. Because to understand how catastrophic this collapse is, you need to see what China was before Jardine. In 1800, China ruled the world, not through conquest, through economics. They had what everyone wanted: tea, silk, and porcelain. Every European drank Chinese tea. Every aristocrat wore Chinese silk. Every wealthy home displayed Chinese porcelain. The British were obsessed. By 1800, they were importing 23 million pounds of tea per year. The entire British economy ran on it. But China didn't want anything from Britain. British merchants would arrive with ships full of wool, watches, manufactured goods. The Chinese weren't interested. So the British paid in silver, mountains of it. Silver was flooding into China so fast it was draining Europe's reserves. In 1793, King George III sent a trade delegation to Beijing. Open more ports, lower tariffs, let us trade freely. The emperor's response: we possess all things. I set no value on objects strange or ingenious and have no use for your country's manufactures. Translation: we don't need you, you need us. And he was right. China's economy was larger than all of Europe combined. 400 million people, 1/3 of humanity, self-sufficient, powerful, wealthy beyond measure. The British had a problem. How do you trade with an empire that doesn't need anything you have? They found the answer: opium. And in just 40 years, William Jardine's machine reversed everything. The silver that used to flow into China, now it flows out. Farmers abandon their fields. Food shortages spread. And here's the economic death spiral. Every chest of opium cost silver, Chinese silver. By 1838, China is bleeding 9 million silver dollars per year into Jardine's pockets. The same silver that used to make China wealthy is now draining the empire dry. The currency collapses. Inflation explodes. A bag of rice that cost 1 silver coin now costs 5. Peasants riot, not because they're starving, because they need opium and can't afford it. But here's the question: how do you stop an addiction crisis when your entire country is hooked? How do you fight foreign merchants when your own officials are their customers? December 1838. The emperor makes a decision that will change history. He appoints Lin Zexu as imperial commissioner. One mission: destroy the opium trade. Lin is 53 years old, a scholar, a poet, a government official known for two things: his brilliant mind and his absolute refusal to accept bribes. In a system drowning in corruption, Lin Zexu is incorruptible. He arrives in Canton in March 1839. Immediately, he starts gathering intelligence. Who are the Chinese dealers? Who are the foreign suppliers? Where are the ships? Where are the warehouses? Within weeks, he's arrested 1,700 Chinese opium dealers, confiscated 70,000 opium pipes. But that's just the beginning. Lin knows the real source of the problem: the floating warehouses, the foreign merchants, William Jardine himself. He sends a message to the foreign trading district: surrender all your opium. every chest, every ship. The foreigners laugh. Who does this bureaucrat think he is? They're about to find out. Because Lin isn't like the other officials they've bribed. He isn't like the generals they've bought off. He isn't like anyone they've ever dealt with. And in 24 hours, 350 foreigners are going to be starving, trapped, begging for mercy. March 24, 1839. Lin Zexu surrounds the foreign factories in Canton. The foreign factories aren't ships. They're a walled compound on the waterfront where all foreign merchants live and work, a small district inside Canton. Offices, warehouses, living quarters. 350 foreigners trapped inside their own neighborhood. Lin doesn't attack with soldiers. He attacks with isolation. He orders all Chinese servants to leave the foreign district. Cooks, cleaners, translators, boat operators, gone overnight. 350 foreigners wake up completely alone. Then Lin posts armed guards at every gate, builds barricades across the streets, strings chains across the river to block boats. No one in, no one out. Food deliveries stop. Water deliveries stop. Day 2. They butcher their horses for meat. Day 3. Rationing water, 2 cups per person. Day 4. Some try to bribe the guards. The guards report them to Lin. Day 5. A British merchant tries to escape over the compound wall at night. Caught, beaten, thrown back inside. Day 6. The water is almost gone. Men are sick from heat, stress, rotting horse meat. Lin sends another message: surrender the opium or starve. The British superintendent, Charles Elliot, has no authority to do what he's about to do. No permission from London, but he has no choice. He orders the merchants to hand over everything. 20,283 chests of opium, over 1,400 tons, worth $2 million. The largest drug seizure in history. Lin Zexu doesn't just confiscate the opium, he destroys it. He orders workers to dig 3 huge trenches near the sea at Humen. Each trench is 150 feet long, 75 feet wide, 7 feet deep. The opium is carried from the warehouses in wooden chests. Workers break open each chest, dump the sticky black paste into the trenches, mix it with salt and lime. The chemical reaction is violent. The mixture bubbles, hisses, dissolves into toxic sludge. Then they open the sluice gates and wash it into the ocean. It takes 23 days, 500 workers, 20,000 chests. Lin writes a poem apologizing to the gods of the sea for polluting their realm. When it's done, he writes a letter to Queen Victoria. The wealth of China is used to profit the foreigners, he writes. By what right do you send this poison to harm Chinese people? Let us ask, where is your conscience? Opium is forbidden in your own country because you know it's poison. So why do you sell it to us? The letter is sent to London. Queen Victoria never responds. Most historians believe she never even saw it. But here's what Lin doesn't know. While he's writing letters appealing to British conscience, William Jardine is sitting in Lord Palmerston's office with maps of the Chinese coast, with battle strategies, with a complete plan for war. Lin thinks he's won. He destroyed the opium. He humiliated the merchants. He appealed to British morality. He has no idea what's coming. Palmerston was skeptical at first. War with China? Over drug smugglers? But Jardine was prepared. He didn't talk about opium, not once. He talked about British property stolen by Chinese officials, British citizens held hostage, British honor insulted. He talked about markets, 400 million Chinese consumers, the biggest untapped market on Earth. If only they could be forced to open their doors. He spread his maps across Palmerston's desk, pointed to weak spots in Chinese defenses, explained exactly which ports to seize, which rivers to blockade, where to land troops. Palmerston was impressed. This wasn't some wild-eyed merchant ranting about lost cargo. This was a complete military operation. The war debates in Parliament were fierce. William Gladstone, future Prime Minister, stood up and called it a war more unjust in its origin, a war more calculated to cover this country with permanent disgrace. I am in dread of the judgments of God upon England for our national iniquity towards China. He pointed out the obvious hypocrisy. Opium was illegal in Britain. The British knew it was poison, and yet they were about to go to war for the right to sell it to the Chinese. But Gladstone's side lost. The vote was close. 271 votes for war, 262 against. 9 votes. 9 votes that would kill tens of thousands, addict millions, collapse an empire, create Hong Kong. 9 votes that would reshape Asia for the next 200 years. June 1840. A British fleet appears off the Chinese coast. 16 warships, 4 steamers, 4,000 soldiers, and several vessels leased from Jardine, Matheson and Company. William Jardine was making money on both sides of the war he'd started. The Chinese had no chance. Their weapons were 200 years out of date. Matchlock muskets, bronze cannons, wooden junks. The British had explosive shells, rifled guns, and iron-hulled steamships. At Chunpi, British ships fired from beyond the range of Chinese guns. The Chinese couldn't even shoot back. By noon, 11 Chinese junks were burning. Hundreds of Chinese dead. The British moved up the coast. Amoy, Ningbo, Shanghai. Each battle was the same massacre. Tens of thousands of Chinese dead. British dead, fewer than 100. By August 1842, British forces threatened Nanjing. The emperor had no choice. Chinese officials boarded HMS Cornwallis and signed the Treaty of Nanking at gunpoint. The terms were almost word for word from the Jardine paper. China pays $21 million in reparations, $6 million for the destroyed opium, $12 million for the war. China opens 5 ports to foreign trade, and Britain takes Hong Kong, a nearly uninhabited island off the southern coast. The treaty forces China to hand it over, permanently. British territory now. The Chinese negotiators are horrified. It's one thing to pay money, another to open ports. But to give up Chinese soil to a foreign power forever? They have no choice. British warships are at the gates of Nanjing. Hong Kong becomes Britain's headquarters for the opium trade. For the next century, every chest of opium flows through its ports. Today, it's one of the world's financial capitals, built on a foundation of opium. And in 1842, the trade doesn't stop. It explodes. William Jardine never called himself a drug lord. History did that for him.